201. Okay, continuing. We said the biocultural aspect talks about the cultural and the biological causes of illness. This is where they use ethnography, that's anthropologists, they use ethnography to uncover the issues around health, the ideas on health, looking at the affected parties, looking at the scope of their understanding towards the health detriment that is affecting them. We said the relevance of anthropology emerges from the global crisis. We've had many global crises. We remember we had the Spanish flu during the 1800s. We had many more, including HIV after that. We had TB, we had Ebola, we had COVID-19. So the biocultural aspect comes from wanting to understand the cultural, which is the humanistic, and the scientific, which is the biological aspect. Okay, we will fix that. Those who cannot access the YouTube link, we'll fix it after this class. You have to email me after the class. Also, medical anthropology introduced the pluralistic approach of looking at medical system. That is not looking at the biomedicine only, but looking at ethnomedicine as well, looking at other alternatives, because it's not only that we deal with the psychological aspect of illness, but we also deal with the physical aspects, where indigenous knowledge comes into play, where ethnomedicine is mentioned. So our last class also tried to also introduce you to 5 approaches of medical anthropology when they want to understand the cultural and the biological causes of illness. That is where the transdisciplinary nature and the interdisciplinary nature comes into play. Amongst the 5 approaches we spoke about last time was the biological aspects, which exclude the psychological and the environmental and the psychological elements of illness. It only relates to the genes, the evolution of humans, because the evolution of humans, as I've mentioned last time, it's accompanied with many illness. People get ill. They get ill from cancer, they get ill from cardiovascular disease. It could be because of too much oil people are eating, too much sugar people are eating, where diabetes comes into play. So you see, the evolution of human has required the intervention of medical anthropology, its interdisciplinary nature, to not only look at the social, but also the scientific aspect, because the social is accompanied with the cultural aspect, behavior, how we act, how what we do, which exposes us or which perhaps makes us sick, which makes us ill. Amongst the 5 approaches, we spoke about the biological and the ecological. The ecological is because of the industrialization that came. Industrialization came with the transformation of habitats, which means more trees were lost, people were cutting trees. There was habitat transformation where people started to build cities. Cities were never sanitary. Until the drainage system was introduced, cities were dirty. They made people ill. I spoke about plague last time. Plague happened in England, which killed a lot of people. So during the industrialization, the introduction of industrialization came with the ecological detriments, where nature was transformed, being changed, people getting sick, toxic waste being thrown all over. Because with the coming of industries, chemical industries came, motor vehicle industries came, because we understand that industries today are placed in a remote area where no one will reach, where no one will come or even visit that particular place. So it's important for you to understand that last time we spoke about the relevance of anthropology, of medical anthropology, where we started by defining anthropology, where we started by structuring the need for medical anthropology, talking about the global crisis, talking about the approaches that we use as medical anthropologists to uncover, to come up with the resolutions to what is making people ill, asking them. Today, we are going to be moving on to our second theme. Okay, health and illness in evolution. It's important for us to understand health and illness in evolution. Understanding health and illness will help us understand the evolutionary perspective. I said to you, evolution introduced many crises. It introduced many social problems. People were thinking that they were being civilized. Civilization indeed came with many advancements. Technologically, we advanced. People can open a fridge and just get some cold drink, cold water. Those days, people had to walk a mile just to get water. They had to hunt for their food. Today, we have ready food. Open the fridge, you open that. It's simple. It's simple, but the evolution has to be understood for you to understand what is happening to people. So it's not only about us understanding the epidemiological transition, but to understand the social, the cultural, and the natural aspects that relate to the great epidemiological transition. Okay, as we can see, health, illness, and evolutionary perspective. Going to our first aspect today is how disease change over time. Diseases have changed, they've transformed. This is because of climate change, possibly. This is because of habitat transformation. This is because of the increased population, human population, which we understand that an increase in human population comes with many health and environmental problems. Human evolution took its course plus or minus 5 million years ago. 98.9 of your genes are shared with chimpanzees. Just that small part that makes us human. You will see how we have transformed, how we have changed, how we have advanced. But for us as a medical anthropologist, it's not only about the changes that have happened and the advancement, but it's also about the adaptations to those changes, because these changes are happening very quick and adaptation is happening very slow, which is where aspects of natural selection happens. Some people cannot adapt to heat, perhaps, or example. Some people cannot adapt to the kind of food that is eaten today. There are many, many evolutionary considerations when we want to understand the great epidemiological transition, which happened plus or minus 5 million years ago. The story of the planet is not only to tell you about the story, but to also outline the evolutionary transition, the evolutionary transformation, the evolutionary changes that humans have to or had to endure. The Earth is, the Earth is plus or minus 4.7 billion years old. 3.5 billion years ago, life started to develop. You see, again, the context is for you to understand these changes, to also look at how these changes have impacted human evolution, to look at the relationship between how we adapt and the changes that are happening, because these changes continuously shape the ecological aspect, the social aspect, and the cultural aspects of our evolution, because we no longer live as we did 100 years ago, or 1 million years ago, or 250 million years ago. Those changes are accompanied with illness, they are accompanied with diseases. So in this context of medical anthropology, just understand that the changes in our evolutionary process have introduced many social challenges, in as much as they have perhaps upgraded how we view and perceive our environment. Okay. From this point, we see the story of human evolution and change. At this point, we need to understand that there were no continents. Our countries, it was all one, divided into parts, into two parts. You see, environmental aspects. Remember, medical anthropologists had three orientations. They had three specific orientations. That is viewing society as biology, viewing population as a cultural trait or having a cultural trait, and viewing the population with regards to the units of ecological system, changing their ecology or adapting to the changes in their ecology, which is what happened when the earth divided. The division of earth, to those who did life sciences understand the speciation process that took place, where many species started to develop differently from others. It is an example with us as humans that we then began to develop differently. We started to develop in various ways. North was called Laurasia land, and south was called Gondwana land. So those are examples of north and south. How Earth was. The sharing of the same continent meant that people or animals during that time had similar adaptations. They had similar natural environment challenges. They had similar problems. But once things started to change, which is a demonstration of our ecological evolution, a lot started to seem different. Okay, human survival over time. We evolve as creatures and change as species. Our environment changed, we adapted to new viruses. You see, the changes in the environment causes other adaptation requirements, because speciation happens, natural selection happens, which is what has been happening to us as humans. Those who cannot survive, they need to die, they are dying. Cultural system evolves over time. That is this ecology change called the epidemiological transition. So we're looking at the epidemiological transitions today, because those epidemiological transitions, they linked to cultural, scientific, and social elements. They link to the transitional period of humans, linking to adaptational requirements, and linking to illness and diseases that are affecting humans, which is what medical anthropology is about, understanding and improving the ideas and the norms around illness and disease, trying to change people's values. Okay, first epidemiological transition, which was the agricultural revolution and the spread of disease. I've mentioned on our last class that during the hunters and gatherers society, there were fewer instances of illness. Yes, humans have always got ill, they've always been sick, they've always died from that because it's part of the cycle. But with the changes, the transition from hunters and gatherers to agricultural revolution, it meant that the population started to react or adapt differently. Looking at how it happened, we would read the below. Occurred 10,000 years ago, called agricultural revolution. Agriculture introduced the land use element, domestication of animals, and the use of land as a resource, as part of the system by the households. With the agricultural revolution about 10,000 years ago, increasing sedentary life and larger population groupings. Remember, I said to you, environmental changes is accompanied with disease and illness. The transition, the evolution from agricultural society from hunters and gatherers society to agricultural society was accompanied with many sickness, with many illness. Population started to group. Instead of staying in scattered isolation, they started to stay in one location, changing their environment, cutting the trees so that the space would be bigger, engaging in more land use agriculture to accommodate the entire population. the growing population. Through that, the trees started to be cut, opening more space, engaging in more agriculture. Today, agriculture is so sophisticated that there is a use of larger machinery, use of more land, engaging in more use of fertilizers, which is a problem to the environment because environmental changes, environmental transformation, the evolution of humans has a detrimental result. It always results in complex social, environmental, or even cultural illness. Okay, related in first epidemiological transition in which infectious and nutritional disease increased. They increased because the population was increasing. The increase in population had to increase the demand in agricultural supply. And an increase in agricultural supply will mean we need more land, we need more fertilizers, and we need to speed up the process, the gap between plantation and consumption had to be cut, which means more fertilizers to speed up the process. With the speeding up of the process, these fertilizers and these bigger, larger vegetable sizes had an impact on nutritional aspects of humans. It's caused, example, diabetes. It's caused, for example, cardiovascular disease because too much oil causes the oil buildup in the heart. Over time, especially for men, it becomes a problem because you might die from cardiovascular disease. Okay, so nomadic lifestyle based on kinship started to happen because the kinship was the leadership, which then engaged in the community or engaged with the community to increase their agricultural supply, guiding the process, ensuring that the population, as it is closer together, is well fed, which then placed more pressure on the agricultural aspect, which initially was a good idea, but today it is an environmental problem, it is also a social problem and a health problem for people. That is why medical anthropology is still interested in social and cultural aspects that affect human health. There was a natural balance. There was a natural balance of group size and food resource. For nearly 5 million years, humans lived in widely dispersed, nomadic and small populations that minimized the effects of infectious disease. You see how an increase in population, habitat transformation produces problems, produces more illness and disease for the community. How what we view as civilization creates hostile environments for us as humans. In as much as we enjoy opening the fridge, eating yogurt without chasing after a cow or anything that's related to us eating, not doing much of agriculture, just buying the veg is also another issue because you will then place the pressure on the farmer who's supposed to produce 3 times a year. Initially, the land produce had to take a bit of time, at least per year 2 times we can produce. But in modern times, the soil is overused 4 times, 3 times. This is not only to meet the population needs, but also to make profit, which is a cultural problem, which is also producing an environmental problem. Because in medical anthropology, we do not separate the environmental aspect, the cultural aspect, and the biological aspect, because these transitions, these changes did impact on our genes. We are no longer the same humans as the chimpanzees, or the same species as the chimpanzees. We are no longer the same humans as Homo sapiens or Homo habilis. You see, the transition is good because we are becoming smarter, but we are becoming more ill. We are becoming more sick. Okay, disease exposed to protozoa, you need to understand, and zonic. Okay, protozoa can affect humans indirectly through their effects on the environment. How your effect on the environment produces the result to how you are going to adapt, how you are going to survive. Currently, we're dealing with climate change, and humans are encouraged to change their behavior. Changing your behavior include starting to be green. Being green means using less of plastic. Using less of plastic means using less of water, wasting less of water. Same as this process, our transition has been fast in such a way that we are adapting very slow, very slow. So understand what is a protozoa and understand the zonic. Okay, because zonic is the second class of diseases. Just understand that it is the second class of diseases and the protozoa forms the first class. For example, illness contacted from animals and insects where sleeping sickness, tetanus, scrub typhus, relapsing fever, all these tuberculosis and others are parts of zonic diseases that afflicted earlier hunter and gatherer societies. These are all parts of the zonic. So understand that too. Just know that you are writing MCQs, and to some extent you will need to write an essay. So your essay needs to be informative. It needs to be detailed. You cannot cut our notes here without doing your own research, and then you think you are going to pass. It's not going to happen, trust me. Okay, infectious disease started to come about after we settled down as a species. Agricultural revolution, yes, 10,000 years ago, more than 100 years ago. Agriculture was first documented in the Middle East 10,000 years ago. So the transition, the introduction of agriculture is not a one-day process, but it became a part of the evolutionary process, changing, trying to adapt to new ways. It became that process because in as much as we would say they were healthier, the hunters and gatherers societies, but they were not advanced enough to deal with those small illnesses that were affecting them during that time. They were not equipped as we are, in as much as we are equipped, but we do not eat as they did, which is a contrast in between. Okay. Starts of producing and experimenting with cultivation was through wheat, which we still eat today in South Africa. Rice, we do eat. Corn, lentils was also part of that. You see, they introduced small number of vegetables or cultivating vegetables. And then after some time, every nation, every culture started to introduce some parts. So the evolution of agriculture was not a one nation contribution, but it was a worldwide contribution. It was an international contribution. It was not only about one nation, but it was about the whole human species, the whole need for the human species to adapt to land use as part of their lives. Okay, also started domesticating cats to chase rodents from eating the stock. Yes, domestication, as I've mentioned before, started to happen. Dogs, cats, sheep. Sheep were domesticated for selling at a later stage, which was part of England and in French Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution was not a European thing, but over time it became a global aspect through the process of globalization. I'm not going to be reading all of this, but I need you to understand that we have epidemiological transitions which inform us about the evolutionary process of humans, the positive, the negative, the shortcomings of human development. Also, this came about in advance of medicine in Europe. Yes, medicine started to advance in Europe. The advancement of medicine introduced biomedicine. The introduction of biomedicine started to make the whole human civilization situation better, in as much as what we eat had not changed, but the adaptation started to happen through biomedicine because people are dying less and less. even in as much as we eat less and less healthier food. For example, I made an example on a show, Super Size versus Super Skinny, where you show that, or where it's shown that humans, especially those rich humans in Europe, have started to get fatter and bigger. This is an indication of human evolution, that humans will indeed become bigger if they don't watch what they eat, if they don't look at what they eat, if they don't become careful of what they eat. Those are cultural aspects, behavioral aspects, because culture is learned. It is behavior that is learned, shared amongst the generation, just such as agriculture. Okay, done with the first epidemiological transition. Now, we spoke about the first epidemiological transition under agricultural revolution, the introduction of land use, the issues that are accompanied by land use, and increase in population, which introduced in less and less nutritious food, which introduced less and less space, which changed the whole ecology, which changed the whole system. Okay, the second epidemiological transition now was the industrialization, the industrial revolution. We spoke about the agricultural revolution, which came about after the hunters and gatherers societies. Now we are dealing with the second epidemiological transition. I want you to notice one thing. In each epidemiological transition, there is an indication of cultural or biocultural elements, the biological and the cultural aspects of illness that cause or influence or impact on people to become ill, that's influence or impact on people to become ill. So now, with the introduction of industrial revolution, I said yesterday the industrial revolution happened firstly in 19th century, or early, let me just say early 1800s to the 19th century revolution, where economic revolution started to happen, where industrial revolution started to happen, where intellectual revolution started to happen. The three forms of revolution impacted on culture. People started to change how they did things. They started to change how they behave. That is going to work, that is going to perhaps attend a particular class. So the intellectual elements started to happen. The industrial elements introduced psychological problems for people, because now life has changed. We no longer wait for things to happen. We go and make things happen. We don't sit and wait for crops to grow. We just bought the crops. So you needed money. You started to go there. You need to know that the Industrial Revolution introduced the psychological problems, introduced illness. It also introduced the environmental problems, because industries have to be located. They had to be located strategically. They had to be located, which detrimented the environment, affected the environment through transforming the environment. More trees were cut during the 1800s than today, which is why the global crisis of climate change is happening. We have less and less trees, with the tropical rainforest being cut every year. So industrialization itself is, or continuously becomes, a problem. 1800s, 200 years ago, this happened. This brought new diseases, not adapted to it as yet, because we understand that the biomedicine only advanced recently. It's only advanced recently. Plague happened, as I've mentioned. Spanish flu happened because people were closer together. Populations were more closer together. They were no longer nomadic societies, separated, divided by landscape, divided by culture. They started to interact more, which then the interaction was not only good, but also introduced illness for them. So understanding the second epidemiological transition is an advantage to you understanding the biocultural aspect, the social cultural aspect, the natural humanistic aspect of understanding illness of humans. Because this revolutionary change shows you the negatives that comes with it. It introduces you to the problems. Okay, Introducing of chemicals in the environment. There's the introduction of chemicals in the environment. I told you that the industries came with the introduction of chemicals. Chemicals were used for many aspects: cleaning, used for agricultural use, for pesticides, insecticides. To that, where they were disposed, it was a problem for the environment. People that were breathing that air, it was a problem for the environment, because the increase in population affected air, it affected water, it affected the soil. Remember, when using the pesticides and the insecticides, they seep, because you use water, they seep to underground water, and then they poison the underground water. Remember, South Africa is a water scarce country, for example. We also suffer from such problems. So the transition is not always good. There are many problems. I'm not going to read all of this. You need to go through each point, understand that Industrial Revolution had a problem to introduce: disease, environmental problems, and the cultural problems. Okay, people opted to eat unhealthy, fatty food because it tastes good. Yes, McDonaldization. Please, if you go to Google McDonaldization as an example of industrialization, health detriments, because McDonaldization includes the restaurant period, the restaurant era, which we are going through today, where people buying more and more in restaurants, where people are cooking less and less nutritious food, where people are buying more and more of unhealthy food because they can afford it. It's a cultural aspect. But looking at the adaptation elements, we can see that it's indeed a problem. It is an issue because it introduces people to obesity, chronic diseases start to emerge, heart condition, which is a problem, and diabetes, which is a problem. Most of the chronic diseases are controllable by a change in lifestyle. Yes, they are controlled by changes in lifestyle. Changes in lifestyle means you eat more and more healthier food, eat less and less fatty food, eat less and less takeaways, eating more and more vegetables. You see, the concerns around medical anthropology is not only on the biological aspect, but the cultural and the environmental aspect, because the three work hand in hand. There's a symbiotic relationship between viewing the population as a cultural trait, viewing the population as a biological aspect, and viewing the population as part of the ecological transformation and the ecological change. So just understand that. Okay. Okay, discordance hypothesis. We need to know that understanding industrial revolution is centered on many aspects. That is us understanding also as well the decadence hypothesis. We must realize our biological makeup is as a result of million years of evolution. Yes, how we are today is not a one-day process, but it has been a transitional process. It is not only caused by the environmental changes, cultural changes, or biological changes, but the rest of it, the three elements: biological, cultural, and environmental aspects. Because for us to uncover and understand each illness, we look at those aspects. We become an interdisciplinary approach of medical anthropology, or perhaps of anthropology, let me say so. We become an interdisciplinary approach of anthropology because of interdisciplinary nature, looking at the cultural, humanistic elements against the scientific biological aspects, because the evolution is not only found in evidence visible, but it's also found in our DNA. Okay, changes in ecology over time as species has occurred. Yes, it has occurred. Our body still not adapted. I said to you, our evolution is quicker than our adaptation because we are evolving very quick, becoming advanced becoming smarter, becoming a more of an advanced species of humans than any other humans, but we still suffer from the illness because how we adapt is not advanced to biomedicine, is not advanced to what we eat. We do not measure how we evolve to what we eat. We do not look at what we eat. We'd rather evolve than observing the changes themselves. Our genes have not evolved yet for us to adapt to the new way of life. Still think we're in hunter and gatherer mode. From a genetics point, as we move to the second transition, new diseases seem strange to our bodies. Yes, the changes were fast, the adaptations were slow. So you need to understand that that's where the role of medical anthropology comes in. That is to make people aware of this, to make people know and understand that the need for adaptation is important. Fixing healthcare system, fixing the infrastructure, looking at how we see and perceive illness is the key. Okay, biology and our lifestyle change. The general pattern of original lifestyle, biologically programmed. Bullet one, hunter and gatherer, high fiber food, fresh food. Yes. So lifestyle for hunters and gatherers was unique because they hunted their own food. It was fresh, it was high in fiber. It was a different kind of food which changed and contributed to their biology. It transformed their lifestyle. With the second transition, meat was very different from before. Yes, it was different. This is because of environmental changes. What animals eat has an impact on their health. It has an impact on them, which can change the nutritional elements of the meat that we eat. Because a lot of species, tree species are disappearing, which moves species to eat other types of species that exist, tree species, flora species, which then changes their genetics, changing their evolution, changing their adaptation. Because what we eat has an impact on us. We need to understand that. Okay, refined salt and sugar. Yes, second epidemiological transition, which was an agricultural revolution, came with the introduction of salt through industries and sugar, which is a problem to us. Also, with the refinement of water, because water is now with chlorine to some extent. Many countries have dirty streams, dirty water, which forces them to use chemicals to clean those water. Those chemicals have an impact on certain individuals because not everyone is adapted to chemicals. Not everyone is adapted to chemicals. Okay, today, modern lifestyle. So we look at today, modern lifestyle. We store bought food. We store bought food, which means we buy food, we store it in the freezer, and then later we get it. There is no exercise. We don't work for the food, which also adds to the weight. The cultural elements, how we do things, how we behave has changed, which also links to our illness and disease because biological, environmental, and cultural elements are linked in medical anthropology. Highly refined food. Yes, we have more processed food than ever. We have many types of rations. Beef, processed chicken, processed polony is processed, Vienna is processed. The mass consumption in a global scale is an indication that unhealthy food we are eating is affecting us. The meat is unhealthy. Remember, and for example, chicken is unhealthy. Quality chicken, which is expensive, is very rare because people buy cheap chickens. We understand our states of the socio-economic states of our country, South Africa. We understand that people are poor. They get. Sorry, please. Those who just came in, please mute yourself. We are still in class. Okay. Please mute yourself. Okay, second, epidemiological transition and modern chronic disease. Yes, second, epidemiological transition had disease, not enough food, which then poses more pressure to the agricultural side, poses more pressure to the environment, because if the agricultural side is impacted, they want more space, more environmental change, more illness and disease because of the habitat transformation. High blood pressure is introduced as part of the second epidemiological transition illness. High blood pressure, salt is a problem. As we can see here, high salt buildup in blood vessels and fats buildup lead to other diseases, heart disease, stroke, kidney disease, and bad complications. You see, with the coming of the second epidemiological transition, in as much as we thought we are smarter, we are more advanced, but it came with many social ills. It came with many social challenges. So the paper or the test might ask you about the first or the second epidemiological transition. It might also ask you about the relevance of anthropology, or even the definition of anthropology, or even sometimes the approaches that medical anthropologists adopt when they try to investigate and understand a particular illness. So please read under tuberculosis, read under diabetes. I said to you, second epidemiological transition also introduced diabetes, which is part of a malnutritious food that we eat. If you get fatter without being healthy, because there are people who have a body weight with a higher malnutrition, higher vascular risk, vascular disease risk, higher cancer risk, because body weight introduces many ills. TB, BP, diabetes, to those who stay in a very dirty environment. That epidemiological transition now, we spoke about the first one, which was the hunters and gatherers, first one, which touches the hunters and gatherers. That involved the changes and led us to the second one, which was the industrial epidemiological transition. Okay, that epidemiological transition happening now, today. It's happening today. Let me check. Students are speaking here. Students, also remember that LEARN 2022 has notes. We have already uploaded the notes. Everyone have been telling you the same thing. If you are not sure, you will need to ask the class rep anything that's related to you not being able to access the notes, because automatically, if you are registered, you will be linked to LEARN 2022. Don't go to Moodle. Don't go to LEARN 2021. Just go to LEARN 2022, please. Okay. Agricultural revolution, we're done. Industrial revolution, we're done. Now we're dealing with today, modern time. See mutation of disease to another level. Diseases are becoming immune to medication. Yes, the changes in environment, climate change introduces to advanced form of viruses. COVID-19 again is an example. In terms of TB, we have MDR, which is a very dangerous form of TB. It can affect your spinal cord. It can affect you. You can eat medication and get intense treatment for 2 years. Being vaccinated, eating a lot of pills, trying to revive yourself. So TB in South Africa, you need to understand the history of TB to understand the cultural, the biological, and the environmental aspects of TB, or causes of TB, causes of illness, such as TB on the people. Okay, TB was brought to South Africa during the gold rush on 1800s. Yes, it was in 1800s where gold rush happened, where European migrants came down. They came here under bad working conditions. Workers were exposed to silica dust. So we understand when mining, we dig. Digging produces dust. And this overcrowding had an impact on the spread of TB, because if one person gets the TB, then the rest of the miners would get the TB. Poor nutritional status, miners were eating poorly, let me just say so. They were eating less nutritious food. All were major contributions to development of TB. Remember, nutritional aspects, eating less nutritious food is part of culture. Environment, where you stay, is part of your environment, which is a part of the medical anthropological scope, looking at the biological, cultural, and environmental aspects that cause illness, that influence how people understand illness, that shape how people perceive what is affecting them, or the kind of illness that is affecting them. Okay, TB spread easily in the mind. TB spread easily in the mind because people were closer together. People were staying closer together in poor conditions, dusty conditions. Ecology plays a major role in the spread of TB today. Yes, it's because people have moved in a strategic location, suburbs, towns, such as maybe big cities. They've moved to slums where they stay closer together, where they sleep in one room. See? Okay, I'm not going to be reading all of this for you. You are going to read this for yourself. The most recent drug-resistant surveillance data issued by the World Health Organization estimate that an average of almost 10% of MDR-TB cases are XDR-TB. So you see how TB is no longer viewed as a chronic, let me not call it a chronic, as an illness that has transformed and advanced. It has outperformed our biomedicine, which is part of us. So today we looked at the 3 epidemiological transitions, looking at how the evolution of humans has had an impact, or how it has influenced our culture, how we did things, how it has changed our environment, where we belong, and how it has transformed our biology, which is part of our genes. So just know that today was about the epidemiological transitions. Just know the first, the second, and the third epidemiological transition. And also remember that you study after each class. And those who haven't received a Zoom link will also get the Zoom link. Just email me on the side if you are not on the WhatsApp group, but I did send the Zoom link on the WhatsApp group. So today we dealt with theme 2. We are done with theme 2. Next week, we will be going through theme 3. Just remember that medical anthropology deals with health crisis. By looking at the first, second, and the third epidemiological transition, we have been able to draw many illness and disease, the causes of such illness, the environmental contributions, the biological contributions, and the cultural contributions of illness. Please enjoy your day. I will share this class again on YouTube. For those who haven't received the class, yeah, you will find it there. Yes. Questions? Yes. Listening? Yes.
Bengicela ukuthi ulabo Tuesday lutimano nalamano silawa amasicela uwashare online if you can.
Okay. No, I will just share the YouTube link, and then on Learn we do have notes. Just go to Learn 2022, log in there. You will find them.
Yes, I did, and I found transcript readings, not the slides.
Or did you click the Word document that is not highlighted at the top before the readings?
Okay, I'll look at
Check it out. Yes, there's a Word document. It doesn't look clickable, but once you click on it, you will find that it's clickable and it will go through.
Okay, go.
Okay, and also, on the group, I will introduce the class reps, and I will make them administrators, so that if you have issues and I'm not available, you will deal with them. Thank you and bye.